Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Thomas, and I learned that sometimes the people you trust most completely are capable of shattering that trust in ways you never imagined possible. What started as an all-girls trip ended with me calling off our wedding after seeing videos that destroyed everything I believed about the woman I was planning to marry. Michelle and I had been together for 3.5 years when this happened. And while I can't say they were the happiest years of my life, we definitely had a strong bond. We met through mutual friends at a barbecue, and there was this instant connection that felt natural and easy from the very first conversation. Before that night ran out, I would learn that she works as a dental hygienist at a family practice downtown, and I was doing well in my career as a software engineer for a mid-cap financial services company. From the beginning, our relationship developed beautifully over time. We seemed to share similar values about family, money, and what we want out of life. Michelle was funny and warm, someone who made friends easily, but also treasured quiet evenings at home with me. We complemented each other perfectly, and there was no doubt in my mind about what I felt for her. I had believed Michelle to be a trustworthy person. Looking back, maybe that was a mistake on my own side. But back then, she seemed to be honest about everything, from small daily things to bigger life decisions. I have never thought twice about what happens when she says she's going out with friends. She naturally shared information about where they were going and roughly when she'd be home. If someone at work was bothering her, she'd share the details with me. I saw her as an open book, and I never had any reason to question her loyalty or commitment. But after 2 years of dating, the initial zeal in a relationship sort of relaxes. We scarcely see each other during the week, so I suggested we move in together, and we did to a beautiful apartment after some months. At that point, I was working toward a senior position that would give us the financial stability to get married. Moving in gave our relationship a refresh. We developed new routines like Sunday morning coffees on the balcony, quiet walks along the river, and nights spent cooking together and sharing stories. I treasured these moments because they weren't flashy or planned. They were just us, building our life slowly and genuinely. We also had challenges of fully living together. Now I can see how well her words matched her actions, but we tried our best to sort out our misunderstandings without making it a big deal. Every laugh, shared dream, and each quiet moment boosted my belief that we were truly meant for each other. Everything felt like it was falling into place perfectly. I proposed to Michelle on our 3rd anniversary during a weekend getaway to the mountains. It was simple and romantic, just the two of us watching the sunset from a hiking trail we'd discovered earlier that day. When I got down on one knee, she started crying tears of joy before I even finished asking. We spent the rest of the weekend planning our future together and talking about how excited we were to be husband and wife. Wedding planning with Michelle was genuinely fun. She had opinions about what she wanted, but she always made sure I felt included in every decision. We chose a venue we both loved, planned a menu that reflected both our family's traditions, and created a guest list that felt like a celebration of all the relationships that mattered to us. I believed Michelle was excited about becoming my wife, and I couldn't wait to start our married life together. Michelle had a close group of friends who had stayed tight since I started dating her. These women had been through everything together: breakups, job changes, family challenges, and major milestones. I know them, and that's why when Michelle told me she was going to Vegas with the girls, there was no immediate red flag in my mind about it at first. Michelle told me that the girls eventually settled on a long weekend in Las Vegas. She spoke about how they were using the opportunity to unwind, see shows with the girls, try nice restaurants, and just have fun. I supported the idea of de-stressing, especially with her set of old friends with whom I am friends, with a few of their boyfriends. She'd never been to Vegas before, and I was happy she'd get to experience it with people who loved her and I believed I could trust. A few weeks before the trip, I was joking around with Michelle about her Vegas plans. I teasingly asked what if the boys organized and joined them on this trip. Her response was immediate. She said, "No boyfriends allowed." She said they'd all agreed to focus on themselves without any outside distractions from men. While I was joking with the question, I began to consider the notorious image Vegas had kept for a long while. Although I trusted Michelle, I shared my concerns about stories I read about women coming to Vegas and making a mess of their relationships. Michelle was firm that nothing of that nature would happen. I loved how direct and reassuring Michelle was about the boundaries she had set. I had always believed Michelle to be thoughtful about these kinds of things, so her assurance felt completely genuine and trustworthy. The week before Michelle left for Vegas, we had several conversations about how much we were going to miss each other and how excited we both were about our upcoming wedding. Michelle said she was looking forward to having some fun with her girlfriends, but that she was mostly excited about coming home to me and continuing our wedding preparations. We joked about what could go wrong, teasing each other about slot machines and silly souvenirs. We even made a small Vegas pact, a light-hearted agreement to enjoy ourselves, but to check in every evening with a quick message. We also talked about how we'd seen other couples damage their relationships by making poor choices when they were apart. Michelle laughed, saying, "I promise, Thomas, just the girls. No distractions." She said our love was too important to risk over anything temporary or meaningless. Her words felt reassuring, and I believed them completely. I remember Michelle telling me that she couldn't understand how people could throw away something real and beautiful for a few hours of fun that didn't matter. She said our relationship was the most important thing in her life, and that she was looking forward to coming home and becoming my wife. These conversations made me feel completely confident about Michelle's character and our future together. We spent that week together, never imagining that her assurances could be broken so completely. The night before Michelle left for Vegas, we had a romantic dinner at home. She showed me her itinerary and the hotel where they were staying, and we laughed about how she'd probably lose a little money at the slot machines but have fun doing it. Michelle said she'd text me updates when she could, but that she wanted to be present with her friends and not spend the whole trip on her phone. I drove Michelle to the airport and kissed her goodbye, telling her to have an amazing time and make wonderful memories with her friends. She hugged me tight and said she loved me more than anything, and that she couldn't wait to come home and tell me all about the trip. Watching her walk into the airport, I had my doubts that I was letting my woman out into the wild. But I comforted myself with the thought that she was surrounded by good friends. The first day Michelle was gone past normally. I got a few sweet texts from her saying they'd arrived safely and were settling into their hotel. She sent a picture of all the girls together in their room, looking excited and happy. I texted back, telling her to have fun, and then focused on work. The second day of Michelle's trip started out fine, too. I got a text in the morning saying they were heading out to explore the city, and another one in the afternoon with a picture of them at lunch. Everything seemed normal and exactly what I'd expected from a girl's trip to Vegas. That night, around 10 o'clock, I got a message from my friend Ryan. His girlfriend, Amanda, was one of the girls on the Vegas trip with Michelle. His girlfriend had been sending him pictures and videos of this Vegas trip, but some of what she'd captured involved Michelle in situations that he felt I needed to see. The first video Ryan sent was taken at a casino earlier that day. I could see Michelle and the other girls standing around a blackjack table, laughing and having drinks. But they weren't alone. There were several men with them, and from the body language and interactions, it was clear that these guys had approached the girls and were now part of their group. What struck me immediately was how comfortable Michelle looked with these strangers. She was engaging with them like they were old friends. This wasn't the behavior I'd expected from someone who'd promised a trip with girls only with no outside distractions. The second video Ryan showed me was taken several hours later at a nightclub. The same group of men from the casino was still with the girls, and everyone was drinking and dancing together. The atmosphere looked like a typical Vegas party scene, but what I saw next completely shattered my heart. Michelle was on the dance floor with one of the men from the casino video. She was grinding against him, moving her body in ways that were intimate and sexual, with his hands on her hips and her body pressed against his. She was smiling and laughing. It was obvious that she was drunk. I watched the video several times, hoping I was somehow misunderstanding what I was seeing. But there was no mistaking that it was the woman I am to marry in some months' time. She was willingly participating in something that completely violated everything she'd promised me before leaving for Vegas. Ryan explained that his girlfriend had sent these videos because she thought they were fun party moments to share, and he was the first as a friend to show them to me before I found them elsewhere. These videos were devastating for me to watch. Amanda apparently didn't see anything wrong with Michelle's behavior, which made me wonder if any of the other girls thought this was acceptable for someone who was engaged. I no longer replied to Ryan as I was lost in thought, trying to understand how the woman I'd planned to marry in just a few months could be doing this despite her promises. She said the trip was girls only, that there would be no outside distractions from men, and that our relationship was too important to risk over temporary fun. Yet here she was, grinding on some random man she just met in Vegas like she was single and available. This wasn't a moment of poor judgment or being caught up in the party atmosphere. This was my fiancé choosing to be physically intimate with another man. The betrayal was made worse by how completely unexpected it was. Michelle had never given me any reason to doubt her faithfulness or commitment. She'd always been honest, trustworthy, and devoted to our relationship. The woman in those videos seemed like a completely different person from the one I'd fallen in love with and planned to marry. I realized that calling Michelle to confront her about the videos would just give her a chance to make excuses or minimize what had happened. Instead, I decided to take action that would make my feelings clear without giving her the opportunity to manipulate the situation with explanations or promises. We had a group chat for our wedding planning that included both of our immediate families and our wedding party. It was where we shared updates about vendors, timeline changes, and other important details. I opened that group chat the next day and typed a simple message saying that our wedding would not be taking place as planned. Within minutes, the group chat exploded with questions and concerns. Family members and friends were asking what had happened, if everything was okay, and what they could do to help. Rather than trying to explain the situation in words, I decided to let the evidence speak for itself. I forwarded the videos that Ryan had shown me to the group chat. The reaction was immediate and intense. Both families could see exactly what Michelle had been doing in Vegas, and there was no need for me to provide any sort of explanation. The videos showed clearly that Michelle had broken her promises and violated the trust our relationship was built. Michelle must have seen the group chat activity a few hours later when she checked her phone. She started calling me immediately, but I wasn't ready to hear her explanations or excuses. I knew she tried to minimize what had happened or convince me that I was overreacting, and I needed time to think clearly about what I wanted to do. Over the next several hours, Michelle called me more than 20 times. She also sent dozens of desperate text messages saying she could explain everything, that I was misunderstanding what had happened, and that she needed to talk to me urgently. But I'd already seen everything I needed to see in those videos. The next morning, Michelle called some of my friends, trying to get them to convince me to talk to her. They argued that my reaction was completely understandable given what the videos showed. Michelle apparently tried to argue that the dancing wasn't serious and that nothing more had happened. But how would I know? That afternoon, Amanda texted me that Michelle was cutting her Vegas trip short and flying home that evening. Amanda added that Michelle desperately wants to fix things with me and begged me to consider. But I'd already decided that there was nothing Michelle could say that would change what I'd seen. While Michelle was traveling home from Vegas, I spent the day packing up all of her belongings from our shared apartment. Everything she'd brought when we moved in together, I carefully boxed and loaded it into my car. Then I drove to her parents' house and left everything on their front porch with a note explaining that Michelle would need to stay with them. When I got back to the apartment, I called a locksmith and had all the locks changed. I also started the process of removing Michelle's name from the lease and utilities. It felt harsh, but I needed to establish clear boundaries about what would and wouldn't be acceptable moving forward. It was too much work to handle in one day, but I knew this was the only way to close this chapter forever. Michelle arrived at the apartment late that evening and discovered that her key no longer worked. She called me from outside the building, crying and begging me to let her in so we could talk. She said the videos made everything look worse than it actually was, and that she was willing to do anything to save our relationship. I told Michelle through the door that I'd moved her belongings to her parents' house, and that she needed to stay there while we figured out what came next. She kept insisting that we needed to talk face to face, that she could make me understand that what happened wasn't as serious as it looked. But I'd seen what I needed to see. Over the following days, Michelle enlisted friends and family members to try to convince me to give her another chance. Her mother called to tell me that Michelle had made a terrible mistake, but that it didn't reflect who she really was. Her sister came to my workplace to ask if I would listen to Michelle's explanation before making any permanent decisions. But none of these character witnesses could explain away the fundamental issue. Michelle had made specific promises to me about how she would conduct herself in Vegas, and then completely failed those promises when she was in a situation where she thought I'd never find out. After a week of pressure from Michelle's family and friends, I finally agreed to meet with her to discuss what had happened. We met at a neutral coffee shop where we could talk without the conversation becoming too emotional or heated. Michelle immediately started explaining how the men had approached them at the casino, how the group had been buying drinks and showing them around Vegas, and how the dancing at the club had just been part of the party atmosphere. But Michelle's explanations just confirmed what I'd already concluded from the videos. She was describing exactly the kind of scenario she'd promised wouldn't happen, meeting men while out with her friends and allowing those men to become part of their celebration. The physical intimacy was just the visible result of choices she'd been making throughout the evening. Again, how will I know if something else happened behind the camera? Michelle kept insisting that nothing more had happened after the dancing, that she hadn't gone anywhere private with the man or exchanged contact information. She said she loved only me, and that the Vegas incident was a stupid mistake that she regretted completely. For me, the issue wasn't whether Michelle had slept with someone else. The issue was that she'd broken explicit promises about how she'd handle herself in exactly this type of situation. If she was willing to disregard her words so completely about something she knew mattered to me, how could I trust her with the much bigger promises that marriage involved? Michelle started crying and begging me not to give up on our relationship over one night of poor judgment. She promised to do whatever it took to rebuild my trust, to prove that she was committed to me and our future together. But she'd made similar promises before leaving for Vegas, and those promises hadn't held up when tested. I told Michelle that I appreciated her willingness to talk about what had happened, but that I didn't see a way forward for our relationship. The trust between us had been damaged in a way that I didn't think could be repaired. Our wedding was definitely off, and I needed space to think about whether there was any possibility of reconciliation. Michelle continued reaching out over the following months, trying to convince me to give her another chance. She went to counseling, wrote me long paragraphs apologizing for her behavior, and had mutual friends advocate for her. But I realized that forgiveness and reconciliation were two different things. The more time passed, the more I understood that Michelle and I had fundamentally different ideas about what commitment meant. For me, being engaged meant you'd already made the choice to prioritize your relationship over other temptations. For Michelle, that commitment seemed negotiable depending on the circumstances. 6 months after the Vegas incident, I told Michelle with true determination that I wouldn't be reconciling with her. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, because I had genuinely loved her and could remember how perfect our relationship had seemed before everything fell apart. I reminded myself that trust is built over years, but can be shattered in moments. I realized that boundaries and promises aren't just words. They're the measure of respect and commitment. While the heartbreak was too much for me to handle, it also taught me to be honest with myself about what I could and couldn't accept in a partner. I understood that protecting my own integrity and emotional well-being had to come first. The breakup was painful in ways I hadn't expected. Michelle and I had built a beautiful life together and made plans for a future that now would never exist. But as time passed, I realized that calling off the wedding had been the right decision. I learned that trust, once broken completely, is almost impossible to rebuild. Even if Michelle had been sincere about changing, I wasn't sure I had the emotional energy to constantly wonder whether she was keeping her promises or making choices that aligned with our relationship. The experience taught me to pay attention to people's actions rather than just their words, and to take seriously the promises people make about how they'll handle challenging situations. Michelle had looked me in the eyes and assured me about how she would behave in Vegas, and when that situation arose, she chose differently. Looking back now, I don't think Michelle set out to hurt me or destroy our relationship. But I also know that good intentions don't excuse breaking explicit promises to someone who loves and trusts you completely. Sometimes the people we trust most are capable of betraying that trust in ways we never imagined possible. I hope Michelle learned something from our relationship ending that will help her be a better partner to someone else in the future. As for me, I'm grateful I learned these lessons about trust and commitment before getting married rather than after. Sometimes, the most painful experiences teach us the most valuable lessons about what we truly need in a life partner.